Welcome everyone to the Club Champion Series presented by Accelerate Golf. Today we are honored to have Chris Watson, who's a four-time club champion, 2010, 2012 Rock Ridge Golf Club champion, 2018 Tashua Knolls Men's Club champion, and 2022 Tashua Knolls Senior Men's Club champion. He's a very accomplished player, qualified for the 2012 US Mid-Am, and we are very happy to have him here today. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Bikram. Thank you for having me. This is great.
So why don't I just start from the very beginning, Chris? Tell us about your golf journey. How did you get into golf, and how did you progress through to become a scratch player?
Well, Bikram, it really started almost as soon as I could walk. I was married. I was born into a golf family. My parents loved to play. My uncle loved to play. All different family members, and it was something that ever since I was about four, I remember going out and hitting golf balls, and it was just something that we did as a family. It was an activity that we were always involved in athletics, but it was something that I've done my entire life.
That's great. So it sounds like this was a family affair, and you started very young. And where were you at that time? Which golf club were you? Where were you at?
So we were in Scarsdale, New York. I spent my formative years in Scarsdale, New York, and it was mostly at a driving range, and a lot of which is a driving range, which unfortunately now is a nursery. That kind of goes back to tell you how long ago that driving range was there. But I just remember it as a kid. My parents made it fun. Anybody that took us made it fun. It was, hit it as hard as you can, go after the flags. And it had one of those little pop up, the balls, you'd hit a lever and then the ball would pop up out of nowhere on this tee. And so, they always made it enjoyable. It was something that we always did. On occasion, there was some public golf that we would go out and play when we got big enough and old enough. And I was also lucky enough to have an uncle who belonged to Scarsdale Golf Club, and he would take us out on occasion in those formative years. But it wasn't until about 82 that I really got lucky, and my father joined Westchester Country Club in Rye, New York. And that's really where the love of the game kind of took hold, and where I was able to have the greatest playground in the world to go out and play every day.
And on that foundation, so right around when you were 10 years old, you were part of the Westchester Country Club. And then tell us what happened then. Did you get into the high school team? What level of play were you at? What was your handicap at that time?
So I probably was when we first joined Westchester, I was probably in that 90 to 100 range. I mean, it was one of those things where I really didn't have a lot of formal training outside of my family members, but as I said, we were really lucky, and we had this golf playground to play in, and that's really when we started getting some lessons, and we started getting into some clinics, and where we really learned how to really put together somewhat of a short game. Westchester is noted for having a couple of fantastic 18-hole golf courses, but they also have a par 3 course where us kids used to they used to shuffle us over to the par 3 course, and that was really where myself and my brother, who's only a few years younger than I was, we would go out and really learn how to play around the greens and to develop somewhat of a game. It was during that time where I probably went from being, let's call it a 20-ish handicap, and started to slowly get that handicap down to where when I entered high school, it was somewhere around say a 15.
Okay.
a 10 to a 15, but it was also during that time where my uncle gave us a wonderful incentive. For every stroke that we took off of our handicap, he would incentivize us by giving us $20 or $50 for every stroke for the summer. So it really became one of those things where you sit there and say, okay, let's see how good we can get. And that was a fun little incentive, just to help us not only go out and hit balls or go out and play, but also learn how to play the game.
Wow, that sounds like a very, very effective setup. And were you taking lessons at that time? Was there good instruction available? And do you think that was a major factor in your improvement?
There was there was a lot of solid instruction at that time. Westchester is known for having some very, very good pros, but we kind of had clinics that we were a part of. We would go and have some private lessons, and a lot of it was being able to just hone our swing. And if the one thing that I remember was just try to be consistent with everything that you do. And also another big key was, and this is kind of that older school teaching of golf, is own your swing. That instructor is not going to be able to help you when you get out onto the golf course to play. So you're going to have to be able to figure it out. And that was one of the gifts, I think, that the teachers had for us at that time, which was understand what you're doing and own your swing, and you'll be able to get out of any issue that you might happen to have in the middle of a round.
Wow, that's actually very helpful in tournament play, isn't it?
It really is, because you can take any of those players out there. Yes, you can get on a hot streak, and to this day, I know enough about what I'm able to do to maybe fix a problem in the middle of a round, or at least learn how to deal with the problem in the middle of the round. As a once a week or twice a week golfer that you become when you have a job and family and all the rest. If you want to play it at somewhat of a high level, you have to understand of what you're doing and be able to either work with it or fix it.
Right. So coming back to when you were getting into high school, you were about a 15 handicap, and
Yep.
then take us forward from there.
Yeah. So high school, we played, and again, we had a pretty darn good team. In fact, we had a lot of good players, which added to that idea of competitiveness and trying to get better and trying to be the better player on the team. And between that and my uncle's incentivizing us, it really, that's when I took a pretty big leap as far as getting to that single digit, or even at that time, the high single digit handicap player, and also understand what it's like for competition. So that was really the growth period early on of having that foundation, understanding that the short game is really the big key to scoring. And it enabled me to be able to get better just because of the level of competition that I was able to play, both at an interclub level in Westchester as well as in high school, and then eventually college.
Got it. And which high school were you at?
I was at New Canaan High School in New Canaan, Connecticut.
Okay, so that's a pretty strong golf team, if I understand that.
Yes, it was, and as I said, we won our conference my freshman year. We get so even from walking on campus as this freshman, who at the time you think you know everything, and you realize that you're around a lot of pretty good golfers, and you have to show up, and that's kind of where that competitive nature of my golf is I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed playing against other people and trying to figure out ways to beat them. And on a team like that, it was tough to do. But I was lucky enough, as I said, to always be surrounded by a lot of pretty good talent that kind of continued me driving to try to be better.
And after high school, did you play college golf?
I did. I played with a Division III team called Bethany College out in Bethany, West Virginia. Again, you're put into a situation where you might think that you're good, or you might think that you're coming from a hotbed of golf in the middle of West Virginia, and it turned out to be not true. I mean, it was a lot of good players again with that team and the surrounding conferences, and you really learn how to kind of become competitive, try to get better, and really understand what it takes to be successful at that level.
And what was your level of play at that time?
I was close to, I was close to those lower single digit, close to a scratch, probably a 3 or a 4, a constant 3 or a 4. And, you're always trying to get better. And the idea, and that's really one of the first places when I was there for my freshman year, that's one of the first places that I started to think, well, maybe I can potentially do this as a career and something to try. And I ended up leaving school at one point and going down to Florida to try to make it as a professional.
Wow. So that must have been an interesting time in Florida.
It was, and you realize how many good players that are out there. And that's really, I think there was a combination at the time between my drive and you realize that there are people there who are sacrificing everything, and my maturity level, I don't think, was at that point. And I had a tendency to get a little distracted with some other things. And I realized that at that time, I didn't have the ability or the drive and the passion to always practice and always play to be successful at that level. That wasn't, that wasn't at that time really what I desired and wanted. And then you realize if you don't have that desire and you don't have that drive, it becomes very difficult to be competitive at that level. And it turned out to be a very short stint, but a great stint and a lot of fun. And I did learn a lot about how good those guys really are. And a lot of those people that I played with at that level still didn't make it to the PGA Tour. The talent level at the top end of the golf spectrum is incredibly good.
So when you compare your game at that point to the guys who were better than you, who were actually some of them who made it to the PGA Tour, what was the difference?
Well, a lot of it was consistency. There was still a lot of, I wasn't as consistent. I could hit the ball as far as a lot of those guys. I can putt somewhat as well as a lot of those guys. And I had areas where I could go and shoot a low number, but I couldn't shoot a low number over a 3-day or 4-day consistent basis. And that's that separation is when they made a bad shot or they missed a shot, they missed it at the right side of the green, or they missed it in the right place where they weren't going to get into a lot of trouble. There was a lot of elimination of higher numbers. So yes, you might make a bogey out there, but you're not going to make a double or a triple, and you're not going to be able to come back from that. Plus, the ability to go out and make a lot of birdies is something that it really is tough to do mentally, to be honest. It's very, very difficult to sit there and to consistently go low. And there has to be a right makeup. You have to be consistent. You have to be a really, really solid putter. And you have to have the right makeup to not be afraid to go low. and that's that's an interesting combination to put together, and that's why again these guys are so good.
That's very interesting. So what happened after that that stint in Florida?
So I left. When I left Florida, I kind of put my clubs away for a couple of years. I ended up working and getting into my advertising career in New York. Ended up living in New York, and really only playing a handful of times every year. And somewhere in that mix, I had an opportunity to play in a corporate outing, and had one of those days where I don't know if how relatable it is, but I find it after every long layoff, you go back and you have that one round early on in the season where it's like, wow, I'm making everything. I can hit it wherever I want. I can do all the rest. And I had that experience, and I've refound the love for the game, and I refound my passion for the game, and I found that I wanted to play more often, and that I wanted to see again how good I can become. And it was at that point that I was working with an instructor at Westchester called Tom Patry, who really kind of ingrained into my head not only the consistency of what I was doing as far as being able to practice and what I should be practicing and what I should be working on, but also how to play a golf course. And that really, to this day, is in my mind the most important thing that I could do to be able to get better and to be able to kind of maintain a high level.
And I guess that was very similar to what you mentioned about the guys who made it to the PGA Tour, who were that class of golfers.
Yeah.
Was that they were able to manage the course.
Yeah. It really, and that's such a key thing. And it's something that I tell a lot of my friends who are, maybe in the mid-teen handicappers or 20 handicappers, is learn how to play a golf course, and learn how to play a golf course really from the green back. How do I get to the green? Well, it's best if I hit it in this spot to be able to get it into the middle of the green. Okay, so how do I get there? And it doesn't necessarily mean always pull driver. Sometimes it's, maybe I hit an iron, or maybe I hit a 3-wood, or maybe I hit a hybrid into that area and then put it into the middle of the green and then 2-putt. Hey, listen, I just made 4. Okay, all right, I made par. Next, on to the next hole. And by eliminating some of those larger numbers, by getting into trouble, by pulling a driver on every tee, or doing something that I can cut this corner, or I can hit it over this water, find out the best way to get it onto the middle of the green, and then your short game takes care of everything after that.
Yes, I think that's really good advice for a lot of golfers. And it also cuts down the frustration in the game, because, one day you're shooting 80, the next day you're shooting 88, and then you're like, what's going on here? But this is great advice for all of us out there struggling to score better.
It really, and that enjoyment of the game, we only have, especially living up in the Northeast, we only have a limited window to play during the year when you're not covered up in all the warm weather gear. And you really want to have your best enjoyment of the game. And for those of us who don't get a chance to practice all that often and don't get a chance to really work on your game on a consistent basis, it's doing things mentally by saying, okay, what's the best way for me to get the ball in the hole? And it might be hitting 5-iron into the middle of a green to be able to make 4. Okay, we didn't give ourselves maybe a birdie opportunity, but you know what? We eliminated the double bogey, which
Right.
is always a big thing.
Yes. And so which years were these? Was this like the early 2000s when you were working with Tom Patry?
This was mid-90s. So it was the
Mid-90s.
mid-90s. I really started to find that passion again and find that ability to come out and play. I had an opportunity to move out of the city, and I lived in Rye and went to the Rye Golf Club, and they had a great facility, and they had a couple of different guys that are out there that were great players, and I got into their group and And again, that idea of practicing on your short game, making sure that you can get up and down from everywhere, and putting. By doing that, I realized that my scores went down greatly, and a pretty good clip. Where over a short period of time, I went from, probably when I picked the club up again, I was probably in the 6, 7, 8 handicap range, and I was able to get down to low single digits pretty quickly just by really concentrating on shots from 100 yards and in and around the greens, and figuring out golf courses. That really is where I saw a huge jump in my ability kind of moving forward.
So even to get to the 6, 7, 8 handicap range, you need to be a good ball striker. Tell us about how, how did you become a good ball striker? And even today, how do you maintain that level of consistency in your ball striking?
Well, you said the word, and it's consistency. It's the ability to go out and have a swing. I've talked to a lot of people, and they say, they might be a 10, 12, 15 handicap, and they go, well, I can't draw the ball. I can't draw the ball. And I said, well, why are you trying to draw the ball? You don't have all the hours to draw the ball. Find out what your swing is. And that really is where I found out over a lot of different years and just hitting balls that I'm a natural fader of the golf ball. So especially during that period of time, I sat there and said, okay, I can eliminate the entire left side of the golf course. And I know that I'm going to hit a fade or a little cut, or if it goes dead straight, I can still aim up the left side of the golf course and just let everything peel right. To this day, and I'm right around a 1 handicap, I am not comfortable drawing the ball. And it's because I really don't have the time to consistently work on it to make sure that that's a strong part of my game. I rely on hitting that cut. So by going off and saying, okay, this is the way I hit the ball, this is the way I go and swing. Everybody's swing is different. Nobody's going to swing exactly. You even look on tour, Rory and Scotty Scheffler, and you can look at all of the top players. Not all of them swing alike. They all have their own idiosyncrasies. So by going out and hitting balls in the range and working with a teacher, obviously that's a big thing. And I still work to this day with a number of different guys that will just tell me, okay, you're doing this or you're doing this. Let's work on making that consistent. And understanding what you're doing, understanding what your swing, and kind of moving on from and working with that, you're going to see a lot of, you're going to see a huge decrease in your scores by understanding this is what I can do, and I'm going to work within that.
So it sounds like you have a very good mental picture of your swing, what you want it to be. And do you use any apps or any technology or any training aids to fine-tune that or keep it consistent?
So I rely on a lot of video. And so this is one of the things that I started doing back when I was working with Tom Patry at Westchester. I've continued it with Brian Hussey at Rock Ridge and Jeff Jones, and Dave Beauvais, who's at Tashua now, is let's take a look at a video and let's see what my swing looks like. And then with the way that you have, phones now, you can take a video at any point in time. I can see what I'm doing. And then just through the visualization, which I happen to be a very visual person, that I can see that visual, I can see it on screen, understand what I'm doing, and be able to just tweak it a little bit. I'm not going to make any major changes. Again, with major changes, you have to hit a lot of balls, and you have to be consistent about your practice, and you have to go out there. You really don't have the time, or at least I don't, as a working professional and with kids and a wife, and your time is limited. So what I can do with what I have, to be as consistent as possible. And that really is the key to the whole thing, is being able to take a look at that video, understand what I'm doing, have those guys pointed out to me to make sure that it's correct, and then just continue to work with that when I'm at the range. I'll have my girls, if I go hit balls with my girls, I'll have them videotape my swing, and they'll usually critique it because they're, teenagers. But a lot of that is it's just another fun thing to do.
Right. So is there one particular move in your golf swing which is the key to your whole swing?
I really, I have a trigger right now, which is I'm trying to use my left forefinger to push the club back. But really, the one thing that's consistent that I've found throughout everything is balance. If I'm balanced at the end of a golf swing, I must have done a lot of things right to get there. And that's the one thing that I consistently try to go back to is I want to be on every swing balanced. You kind of take a picture in your mind of all of the great finishes that you see on the PGA Tour, the LPGA Tour, or even some good high-level amateurs. When they're hitting the ball well, they're balanced. They're perfectly balanced. And they have that high hand finish and chest out to the target, and you're just in that position. I want to make sure that I feel like I'm there every single time. And, again, this is something that I use with friends of mine who ask me, well, what can I do to get better? I said, make sure that you're balanced at the finish, because if you do that and you're there, your tempo's good, and you must have done a lot of good things to get to that position. So that's really the key for me.
So now, taking us from the mid-90s, where you were maybe a low single-digit handicapper, to your experience in the 2012 US Mid-Am, because a lot of people try to get into one of the USGA events. A lot of us fail. So that would have been a really memorable experience for you. So talk about that whole experience.
It really, the 2012 Mid-Am was fantastic. And that was, that's kind of the culmination of a dream. And that's one of the things that I'm grateful that the USGA puts these kind of events together, whether it's the US Amateur or the US Open or the US Mid-Am. If your handicap's low enough, you can enter in and play them. It was just last month that I attempted to play in that US Mid-Am again, and I ended up unfortunately missing the playoff by one. But that experience is really like a tour event. You get treated like a tour member, and you're sitting there as one of, as they said at the time, 254 of the best amateurs over 25 or 25 and over. And it really made me understand that even being a professional and or being a working professional with a career and family, that I can still get to that level and I can still play. Plus, it keeps those dreamers, it keeps that dream alive that I gave up on years and years ago about playing on tour is if you win the US Mid-Am, you're lucky enough to get an invite to the Masters and get an invite to the US Open. So, that dream is still there, that you can go and you can play at that level. But to be a part of that and to be able to make it out in Conway Farms and in Chicago, and to play against such an unbelievably great collection of high-level amateur talent, who, the vast majority of these guys never will go pro, or they had gone pro and then they came back and got their amateur status back. These guys are true amateurs, and they're true career amateurs, and to be a part of that was just a special event.
That's fantastic. So tell us about the level of play at that tournament. I'm sure you ended up playing with guys who were, phenomenal golfers. Was it intimidating at all? How did you handle your game and actually your emotions during that time?
It was very difficult, to say the least, and it was very easy at that point to get overwhelmed. I'd never played at that level of competition before, and when you arrive there, and as I said, they treat you like it's a tour event, and with roped off galleries and all the different amenities that you see these tour players get. It exactly was like that. I had my brother on the bag, which was a wonderful experience. But it is intimidating, because there is that. It was my first time being out there. I sit there and I'm hitting balls next to a guy who won the event 2 or 3 times, and I'm down I'm chipping around an area or playing in a practice area of the guy who was the defending champ. And you sit there and you realize, okay, you forget that your game got you there. And all of a sudden you're going, oh, I wish I had their ability to chip the ball, or I wish I had his putting stroke, or I wish I had, and some of that doubt creeps in. And it really becomes a very intimidating thing. I didn't handle it particularly well the first day. I think it took me about 18 to say 27 holes before I started feeling my hands, which makes for a very difficult couple of rounds. But it was a wonderful experience, and one that I'm desperate to get back to, and really am pushing forward to make it back one day, because I know that I would handle it differently. But to see that level of talent and to see that ability, the way that these guys are fantastic ball strikers and great putters, and still be career amateurs, it's fun to see. It's fun to be around, and as I said, I can't wait to get back there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear, the hunger in and the desire in your voice. So good luck with all your future endeavors there. Any parting advice for the common golfer out there, based on your experience, to enhance the enjoyment of the game or how to improve their game? I think you've touched upon quite a few things, but any parting advice there?
Yeah, I just say enjoy the game. Enjoy it. It's something that you could do. As I said, I grew up in a family of golfers, and to this point, I still play. My mom, who's in her late 70s, my father, who's in his early 80s, they still play multiple times a week. We still get out there as a family. My girls play. My wife plays. It's something that is just a wonderful game that you can play for a lifetime and play with families. Enjoy it. Don't take it too seriously. I find myself at times trying to enjoy it. Find a good group of people to play with, and just go out and play. I find that it's one of the best games in the world to just meet people, and have that experience with people. And always visit your PGA Tour Pro, or sorry, PGA of America Pro, at each one of your facilities, just to get the basics down and just to understand what to do and how to play better. But really find your group, get out there and enjoy this game.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think your story is quite inspiring, actually, and to maintain that level of play for as long as you've done, it's wonderful to hear all the secrets behind your success. I wish you, the very best moving forward, and thank you once again for your time.
Thanks, Bikram. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.